Today I will start about the gross anatomy of the prostate, seminal vesicle, vas deferens and male urethra. Now here figure showing the structure. You can visualize in the given diagram. Number 1, prostate is situated at the neck of the urinary bladder. So this is the bladder you have done in the previous lecture. Now posterior surface of the urinary bladder, there is the sac-like structure, is called convoluted on itself, is called the seminal vesicle. Now you can see here the testis is visualized in the given diagram, and posteriorly you can see the epididymis is continuing here, and the vas deferens is visualized, and here connecting with the lower end with the seminal vesicle, that is the vas deferens. Now, so we will do about the prostate, number 1, number 2, seminal vesicle, number 3, vas deferens, and number 4, that is the male urethra, traverse through the prostate part, then bulbar part, and the penile part. So, we will go in detail about one by one. So, this is the figure showing all the 4 organs along with the male reproductive system. Again you can see here is the section, sagittal section with the anterior surface. Here the prostate is located at the neck of the bladder. Now here you can see the male urethra is visualized here. Now posteriorly here is the seminal vesicle and the vas deferens from the testis to the posterior surface. All the 4 structures visualized in the given diagram. Now here the posterior surface of the urinary bladder. Number 1 is the prostate gland. Number 2, seminal vesicle is a sac-like structure. Number 3, vas deferens. Here you can see the dilated portion is called the ampulla of the vas deferens. And all these are, number 4 is the urethra. So all 4 structures. You can differentiate in the practical dissection hall the male and female urinary bladder with the identification points on the posterior surface of the urinary bladder. All the structures along with the male reproductive system located on the posterior surface of the urinary bladder, that will differentiate the male urinary bladder from the female urinary bladder. Now moving to the number 1. Prostate is the large gland along with the male reproductive organ, is accessory gland of the male reproductive system. The secretion of this gland at the bulk of the seminal fluid along with those of the seminal vesicles and the bulbourethral glands, we will do it later on along with the topics. The prostate, which is firm in consistency, firmness is due to the presence of the dense fibromuscular stroma. So histologically we have done in the histologically classroom slides along with the, so prostate is a fibromuscular organ. So fibromuscular stroma in which the glandular elements are embedded. In the female, the prostate is represented by the paraurethral glands of skin, the female homologous of the prostate. Now, situation of the prostatic gland along with the male reproductive organs, which lies in the lesser pelvis, the pelvic brim along with the bony pelvis separate the lesser and the greater pelvis. So, prostate which lies in the lesser pelvis, below the neck of the urinary bladder, then behind the lower part of, this is the pubic bone. So, here you can see this is the urinary bladder. So, below the neck of the urinary bladder, now this is the pubic bone, this is a pubic symphysis. So lies behind the pubic symphysis, lower end of the pubic symphysis is exactly behind the lower end of the pubic symphysis, behind the lower part of the pubic symphysis, and the upper part of the pubic arch and lies in front of. So this is the rectum in the given diagram. So this is the rectum which lies in front of the ampulla of the rectum. So ampulla is the dilated part of the rectum. So you can see here the urinary bladder and the rectum, both of these two, there is the pouch of the Douglas, we'll do it later on. The rest on the upper surface of the urogenital diaphragm. So here in the given diagram, we can see the urogenital diagram is made up of the 2 muscles. So here the urinary bladder at the nape of the bladder is the prostate gland, and prostate gland is rest on the upper surface of the urogenital diaphragm. So this is the situation of the prostate gland along with the male reproductive organ. Now relations of the posterior gland superiorly. Naturally, the superiorly nape of the bladder, urethra enters the center of the base of the prostate. Inferiorly, as I told you in the relations situation, it lies on the upper surface of the urogenital diaphragm. Urethra, which leaves the prostate just above its apex on the anterior surface. The ejaculatory ducts, we'll do it later on, which pierce the posterior surface of the prostate gland. Now, prostate position, as I told you, lies behind the lower part of the pubic symphysis between the nape of the bladder and the urogenital diaphragm. Shape of the prostate gland, with that the chestnut shape organ base of the prostate, having the part called the apex of the prostate, body of the prostate, anterior, posterior and infralateral surfaces here with the prostatic sulcus. Now you can see size, shape and weight of the prostate gland. Size, shape and weight of the prostate gland resembles with the inverted cone, measuring about 3.5 to 4 cm transversely at the base, that is the width, 3 cm vertically length, 2 cm anteroposteriorly thickness, and its weight about the 8 grams. Now it is inverted cone, measuring here across the base, and the length is 3 cm. Our base is directed upward and lower apex is directed downward, and 4 surfaces, inferior, posterior and 2 infralateral surfaces. Now what are the gross features of the prostate? Having the apex is directed downward, then the base is directed upward, 4 surfaces, anterior, posterior, 2 infralateral lobes. Lobes was described earlier having 5 lobes initially, which are the anterior, posterior, median and 2 lateral. But as of now, the glandular tissue is divided into 3 lobes, the 2 lateral and 1 medial. The figure showing here the structure which divides, this is the anterior lobe, this is the posterior lobe, and here you can see this is the median lobe. So we will do it later on along with the lobes. Now, the diagram showing here the nape of the bladder, where the prostate gland is there, the base is directed upward, apex is directed downward, this is the anterior surface, posterior surface and both the sides infralateral surfaces. You can see again the base of the prostate, apex of the prostate, here the urinary bladder. The posterior surface of the urinary bladder, in the previous diagram we have seen that the vas deferens, the seminal vesicles here, and through the substance of the prostate, the urethra is traversed, called the prostatic part of the male urethra. Now figure showing the diagram here, you can see the anterior lobe, posterior lobe and median lobe. So this is the posterior urethric substance. It travels through the substance of the prostatic gland, divides the entire substance of the prostate gland into the different lobes. Now these are the lateral lobes and this is the posterior lobe. Here you can see the posterior surface and the horizontal section. Now moving one by one. Apex of the prostate is directed downward, surrounds the junction of the prostatic and the membranous part of the urethra, posterior urethra, rests on the upper surface of the diaphragm, separated from the anal canal by the perineal body. Separated from the anal canal by the perineal body. Now here base. Base is direct. So this is the base of the prostate gland directed upward, structurally continuous with the nape of the bladder, and junction is marked by the circular groove which lodges the venules of the vesicle and the prostatic plexuses. Now surfaces. Number 1, anterior surface, that is narrow and convex from side to side. Narrow, this is the anterior surface, convex and narrow from side to side. It lies 2 cm behind the pubic symphysis with retropubic pad which intervening. Its upper part is connected to the pubic bones by the puboprostatic ligaments. the lower end of this anterior surface of the prostate gland, which is pierced by the urethra. As we have seen here, the lower end of this is pierced by the urethra. Now, the lower end of the urethra emerges from this surface, anterior posterior to the apex of the gland, and this surface is composed of the fibrous tissue. Now here the diagram showing the different surfaces. This is the anterior whole is the prostate gland. This is the urinary bladder. You can see this is the anterior surface. Both of these two are the posterior surfaces. You can see here. This is the urogenital diaphragm on which the apex of the prostate gland is raised on the upper surface of the diaphragm, urogenital diaphragm. So this is the sagittal view is given, the anterior showing the anterior surface and the posterior surface. While the posterior view showing here the bladder with the infralateral surfaces. This is the prostate gland and this is the one left infralateral surface and the right infralateral surface. This is the base is directed upward, apex is directed downward. Now posterior surface, as I told you, triangular in shape, flattened from side to side, convex from above downwards. Is separated from the rectum. So here you can see the prostate is visualizing here. Now here is you can see in the given diagram prostate. So this is the prostate, here is separated from the rectum. So this is the rectum pierced by the fascia of the Denon villus, which is a obliterated rectovesical pouch of the peritoneum. So what is the fascia of Denon villus? Which is the obliterated rectovesical pouch of the peritoneum, which is separated from the rectum by this fascia, the posterior surface. Nearest upper border is pierced by the side of the median plane by the ejacular duct. So you can see the posterior surface of the prostate gland. Here you can see nearest upper border pierced by each side of the median plane by the ejaculatory duct. So this is the ejaculatory duct. So you can see in the given diagram the ejaculatory duct. This surface is 4 cm from the anus and can be easily palpated on the digital examination through the rectum. If the patient suffering from the disease along with the prostate gland, the per rectal examination is done by the surgeon in the clinical aspect. So it's called the digital examination through the rectum. It's called the per rectal examination by introducing the fingers into the rectum. So this is the figure you can see given diagram showing here. So introducing the finger into the rectum. So this is the rectum and this is the surface, and you can see here feel the posterior surface of the prostate gland. So diagram showing the per rectal examination. So these are the structures here, posterior surface along with the posterior surface. Again, you can see the diagram differentiating the denonular fascia, the rectum and the posterior surface. So here you can see it is separating between these two. Now, the third and fourth surfaces are the infralateral surface of the prostate gland. So, infralateral surface of the prostate gland are related to the side wall of the pelvis as it lies in the pelvis. So, the anterior fibers of the levator ani. So, you can see here in the diagram, this is the muscle called the levator ani. So levator ani is visualized in the given diagram. So the anterior fibers of the levator ani muscles enclose the gland in the pubo-urethral sling. They are separated from the muscle by the plexus of the veins embedded in its sheath. You can see these are the prostatic venous plexuses. So on either side of the infralateral surfaces you can visualize in the given diagram the prostatic venous plexuses, and here, so the infralateral surfaces which are anterior fibers by the levator ani muscles enclose the gland in the pubo-urethral sling and separated from the muscle by the plexus of the, here the plexus which is separating the muscle by embedded in the sheath. So here you can see the diagram along with the infralateral surface. Now the prostate glands gives the different zones. Now zones of the prostate gland according to the McNeil, the gland is divided into the peripheral zone, the central zone, the transitional zone. Now peripheral zone, here you can see in the given diagram the peripheral zone. The given diagram, left lower side is the peripheral zone which forms the 70% of the entire glandular tissue. It is situated posteriorly and is cancer vulnerable, right? So cancer is more prone for that one. So central zone, here you can see the transitional zone, and here you can see the central zone. So this is the zone you can see here. The central zone forms about the entire glandular tissue, about the population, about the 25% of the glandular tissue, situated posterior to the urethral lumen, situated to the posterior to the urethral lumen. So this is the central zone, forms the 25% posterior to the urethral lumen and above the ejaculatory duct. Now the two zones are like in age cup. The central zone is not involved in the disease and is of Wolffian ducting origin. Now there is a third zone called there is a periurethral transitional zone. This is the transitional. So here again the lateral view of the prostate gland give rise to the number 1, the peripheral zone, number 2, the central zone, number 3, here the transitional zone, forms only the 5% when benign prostatic hyperplasia arises. So there is periurethral transitional zone. The central zone and the transitional zone collectively together constitute as the central gland. Again, figure showing the diagram of different zones of the prostate gland. Now, moving towards the sphincters related to the prostate gland. Now here the figure showing the external urethral sphincter, and here in the internal urethral sphincter and the external urethral sphincter. Now in the prostatic part of the urethra is traversed amongst the substance of the prostate is called the prostatic part of the urethra, and there is the external urethral sphincter mechanism that subserves the sexual function of the closing during the ejaculation. In this sphincter gets resected, retrograde ejaculation occurs. Now distal to the urethral sphincter mechanism is seen at the junction of the prostatic and the membranous part of the urethra will do about the male urethra give rise to the 3 part: prostatic part, membranous part and penile part of the urethra. So distal urethral sphincter mechanism which is seen at the junction of the prostatic and the membranous part of the urethra. It is horseshoe shaped, right, which most of the bulk lying anteriorly. It is distinct from the muscle of the pelvic floor. So it is distinct from the muscle of the pelvic floor. Now here you can see the diagram showing the external urethral sphincter and the internal. This is the internal urethral sphincter. You can visualize in the given diagram, upper side and lower side you can see here the external urethral sphincter. Now again you can see here external urethral sphincter, here is the internal urethral sphincter and here is the external urethral sphincter. So sphincters are visualized externally and internally respectively in the given diagram. Now lobes of the prostate. Right? So the lobes of the prostate, anatomically median and 2 lateral, surgically 5 lobes, anterior, posterior, median and 2 lateral. Right? Now the lobes of the prostate was described earlier having the 5 lobes initially. Right? These are the anterior, posterior, median and 2 lateral. As of now the glandular tissue is divided into 3 lobes, 2 lateral and 1 median. And these are anatomically. Previous one earlier which are the surgical importance with the 5 lobes. Again you can see the diagram. This is the median lobe. So the prostatic urethra traverses vertically through the substance, divides the entire glandular tissue into the anterior lobe. This is the posterior lobe and the ejaculatory duct which divides. This is the ejaculatory duct which divides the median lobe from the posterior lobe. Now again you can see the posterior lobe, and on either side of these two are the lateral lobes. The prostatic part of the urethra is visualized in the given diagram. Now number 1, the urethra and the ejaculatory ducts, as I told you, urethra and the ejaculatory ducts traverse through the substance of the prostatic gland and which divides it into the 5 lobes which represent the 5 group of the epithelial buds of its embryonic origin. Now number 1, anterior lobe lies in front of the urethra. In given diagram you can see, so lies in front of the left lower zone portion which lies in front of the urethra and connects the 2 lateral lobes. It is devoid of the mostly glandular tissue and often called as the isthmus. Now posterior lobe, you can see in the surface, it lies behind the ejaculatory duct and the median lobe we have seen in the previous diagrams, and connects the 2 lateral lobes. The primary carcinoma of the prostate gland begins in this posterior lobe, is common. Now median lobe or middle lobe is wedge shape. This is the posterior lobe and this is the median lobe. Is a wedge shape and lies behind the upper part of this is the prostatic urethra. In front of this is the ejaculatory duct, and in front of the ejaculatory duct and behind the prostatic urethra. Its base produces an elevation at the apex of the trigone vesicae called the uvula vesicae. So what is uvula vesicae? The base of the median lobe produces an elevation at the apex of the trigone vesicae called the uvula vesicae. The median lobe normally projects into the prostatic part of the urethra, raising a ridge-like cord, which is the urethral crest. So this is the prostatic urethra. We'll do the diagram in detail. It contains much, so median lobe which contains much of the glandular tissue and is a common site for the adenoma. Now lateral lobes. Here you can see the lateral lobes are given in the diagram. So the lateral lobes are visualized here. Now lies on each side. So this is the prostatic part, urethra, traverse to the substance. So lies on each side of the urethra. It contains enough of the glandular tissue which may form an adenoma in the old age. Now the topic moving towards the coverings of the prostate, that is the more important for the surgical aspect. The true capsule, number 1, fibrous stroma, number 2, false capsule, that is made up of the visceral layer of the pelvic fascia, the medial and the lateral puboprostatic ligament, posteriorly band with the rectovesical fascia of the Denon velar. So you can see here the capsule, this is the true capsule and false capsule. True capsule and false capsule. So both of these 2 capsules, and between the true and false capsule, both the capsule, the prostatic venous plexus is embedded here. So that is the surgical aspect. For that one is important. When we do the removal of the prostate gland during the prostatectomy, we have to take care about the prostatic venous plexus because it lies between the true and the false capsule respectively. You can see again the diagram with the true capsule and false capsule. So here you can see the venous plexus between the true capsule and the false capsule. Now true capsule. What is true capsule and the ligaments? So capsule in the ligaments of the prostate gland. True capsule formed by the condensation of the peripheral part of the gland. It is formed by the condensation of the peripheral part of the gland. It is fibromuscular structure and continuous with the stroma of the gland. Now lies between true and false capsules. There is a venous plexus as we have seen in the given previous diagrams. Now false capsule. False capsule lies outside the true capsule and is derived from the endopelvic fascia. Anteriorly, it is continuous with the puboprostatic ligament, that is the ligament of the prostate gland. Now on each side, the prostatic venous plexus is embedded in both the capsules respectively. Now posteriorly, it is avascular and is formed by the rectovesical fascia of the Denon velars. A pair of the medial puboprostatic, given diagram you can see in the diagram here, you can see the puboprostatic ligament. This is the true capsule, this is the false capsule. Both of these 2 capsules in which between these 2 embedded the prostatic venous plexus is, you can see. So these are the pair of the puboprostatic ligaments. This is the lateral puboprostatic ligament on either side, and these are so lateral puboprostatic ligament on either side directed along with the base. While the medial prostatic ligament, which are also in the pair, you can see is towards the lower end of the prostate glands. So ligaments in the venous plexus of the prostate gland, so lateral puboprostatic ligament and medial puboprostatic ligament respectively seen along with the upper part and the lower part. Now here the pair of the medial puboprostatic and a pair of the lateral puboprostatic ligaments extend from the false capsule to the back of the pubic bone that we have seen in the previous diagram. Even along with the lower diagram you can visualize. The medial pair lies near the apex, as we have seen. The lateral pair is close to the base. These four ligaments support mainly the gland. So how many ligaments? Two lateral along with the base and two medial along with the apex. Puboprostatic ligament, four ligaments. Now, important Viva questions. Structures within the prostate gland. Number 1, the male urethra. Amongst the entire substance of the prostate gland traverses the part of the urethra, that's why called the prostatic urethra. The gland vertically at the junction, or in given diagram, lower diagram, you can visualize the junction of its anterior 1/3 with the posterior 2/3. So here you can see the anterior 1/3 and the posterior 2/3. So traverse the gland vertically at the junction of these two. Now second is the prostatic utricle. What is prostatic utricle? It's a blind sac directed upwards and backwards. It opens at the middle of the urethral crest. You can see it opens in the middle of the urethral crest. Third structure within the substance of the prostate gland, that is the ejaculatory duct. Now this ejaculatory duct passes downwards and forwards and open into the prostatic part of the urethra on each side of the opening of that prostatic utricle. Now, so these three structures again divides the entire substance of the prostate gland into the different lobes: anterior lobe, posterior lobe and median lobe. So here you can see this diagram showing here the horizontal section, the internal urethral sphincter and the external urethral sphincter. Prostatic urethra, ejaculatory duct and prostatic utricle, all three are the structure lies within the substance of the prostate gland. This is the prostatic urethra, and the lobes we can see the prostatic utricle, ejaculatory duct and the prostatic urethra. So the diagram showing the parts which are visualized in the substance of the prostate gland. Now structural zone of the prostate gland. Histologically, sections of the prostate do not show the lobar pattern of the organ. Instead, there are the two well-defined concentric zones separated by an ill-defined irregular capsule. The zones are absent anteriorly. Now the outer zone. You can see in the given diagram, this is the outer zone, visualizing here. Now this outer zone is composed of the large branch glands, the duct of which curved backwards. You can see the duct of which curves backwards and open mainly into the prostatic sinuses. Now the zone is frequently the site of the carcinoma. So this is the outer zone. Now here you can see the inner zone. Now inner zone is here visualizing. So this is the outer zone, this is the inner zone. Now this diagram along with the inner zone, this is the outer zone. Now inner smaller zone is composed of submucosal glands. How does it form? Composed of submucosal glands opening in the prostatic sinuses and a group of short simple mucosal glands here, and these short simple mucosal glands surrounding the upper part of the urethra. Now here you can see the submucosal glands in the inner zone. These zones are typically prone to the benign hypertrophy. The inner and outer zones are very much prone for the benign hypertrophy. We'll do later on along with the prostate clinical aspect. Now, what is blood supply? Blood supply of the prostate gland, the arterial blood supply by the branches derived from the inferior vesicle, number 1, middle rectal, number 2, and third is the internal pudendal arteries. So all three are arteries supplying the prostate, and the venous drainage, that is drainage is done by the prostatic plexus. Now arterial supply number 1, all three arteries we have seen. All branches of these are, you can see here, all branches of these arteries form a large outer or subcapsular plexus. Now this is the inferior vesical artery number 1, you can see in the given diagram. Now this is the prostatic artery, and this is all these are going to form the capsular branches. Now all branches of these arteries form a larger outer or subcapsular plexus and a small inner or periurethral plexus. The greater part of the gland is supplied by the subcapsular plexus. What is supplied by? Subcapsular plexus. Now veins from a rich plexus called the prostatic venous plexus around the sides and base of the gland. The plexus communicate with the vesical plexus. Yes, this is again important aspect, how the cancerous prostatic cancer, which give rise to later on the metastatic in the skull and the vertebral column. So here the plexus communicate with the vesical plexus and with the internal pudendal vein and drains into the vesicle and the internal iliac veins. The valveless communications exist between the prostatic and the vertebral venous plexus. Here the vertebral column, on either side of the vertebral column, there are the 6 channels of the vertebral venous plexus, and this is connected with the superiorly along with the skull. So these connecting valveless combination which exists between the prostatic and the vertebral venous plexus, through which the prostatic carcinoma can spread to the vertebral column and to the skull. Again, I will repeat it. So, if the patient is in the given radiogram gives the metastatic changes, we can see here immediately go for the prostate. So, here the valveless communication exists between the prostatic and the vertebral venous plexus, through which the prostatic carcinoma as a metastatic purpose can spread to the vertebral column and to the skull. Now lymphatic drainage, chiefly into the internal iliac lymph node, sacral group lymph node, and partly, so chiefly into internal iliac and sacral group, partly into the external iliac lymph nodes. Now what are the nerve supply? So given diagram here you can see the nerve supply is mainly by the inferior hypogastric plexus. You can see this is the nerve supply of prostate gland, the pelvic plexus, so inferior hypogastric nerves here supplying the prostate gland. Now, so nerve supply inferior hypogastric plexus, that is the sympathetic, and the pelvic splanchnic nerves, that is the parasympathetic. Now nerve supply, so as I told you, prostatic plexus of nerve derived from the lower part of the inferior hypogastric plexus, we have seen in the previous diagram. It contains the thick nerves and the numerous large ganglia. We have seen the large yellow colored ganglia in the given diagram previously. It also supplied by the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The gland which contains the numerous end organs, impulses from which are related to the lower 3 lumbar and upper sacral segments. The secretion of the prostate are produced and discharged after stimulation of both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. So again see the diagram in form of the ganglion, and you can see the inferior hypoglycemic nerves, right? So this is about the diagram. Now what are the age changes occurs in the prostate gland? So first at the birth, the prostate is very small in size and is made up of mainly of the stroma in which the simple duct system is embedded, which forms from first 6 weeks after birth up to the age of 9 years, changes are negligible. But between the 9 years of age And 14 years of the age, between 9 and 14 years, the duct system becomes more elaborated by formation of the sideburrs, and the glands slowly increase in the size. Increase in the size between the 9 to 14 years of the age. Now, the age changes in the prostate we have done first at birth. Now at the puberty. What are the changes occurs in the prostate at the puberty? Due to the male hormones, the rapid changes in the gland occurs. At about 1 year, it becomes double. Yes, 1 year it becomes double its pre-pubertal size due to rapid growth of the follicles and the condensation and the reduction in the stroma. Number third, changes occurs from the 20 to 30 years of the life. The marked proliferation of the glandular tissue, glandular elements, which infolding of the glandular epithelium, even though the acid staining procedure in the histological we have seen the classroom slides, the infolding of the glandular epithelium into the lumen of the follicles, making them irregular. Number 4 changes the age between from 30 to 45 years. The size of the prostate remains constant and involution starts. The epithelial infolding gradually disappears and amyloid bodies increase in the number. These amyloid bodies in the lumen of the prostatic glandular acinas, that is called the corpora amylacia. And if the age is advancing, this corpora and a body means body is visualized in the central location of the lumen. So epithelial infolding gradually disappears and start to appear amyloid bodies increase in the number in the form of the corpora amylacia. Now the changes occurs from 45 to 50 years of the life. Here the prostate is either enlarged called the benign hypertrophy or reduced in size called the senile hypertrophy. So how many changes? Number 1, benign hypertrophy due to the enlargement of the prostate, and senile atrophy due to the reduce in the size of the prostate. During the 45 to 50 years, the gross changes occurs in these ages. Now, clinical aspect of the prostate. Number 1, the senile enlargement of the prostate mainly occurs after the 50 years of the age. It is enlarged due to the benign hypertrophy. We have seen previously slide benign hypertrophy and senile atrophy. So 50 years of age it enlarged due to the benign hypertrophy or due to the formation of an adenoma. The postfic word oma is that indicating the benign growth. Now these causes, if patient suffering from the benign hypertrophy will cause the retention of the urine due to the distortion of the urethra. Due to the torsion of the urethra, the retention of the urine occurs in the patient suffering from the benign hypertrophy. The enlargement of the median lobe occurs even though the digital examination we have seen in the previous diagram the per-rectal examination is very helpful to rule out diagnosis of an enlarged prostate. Now, removal of the prostate gland is called prostatectomy, and removal of the thyroid gland is called thyroidectomy. So that is the most important viva question, even though along with the dissection. So we have to keep it in mind that first we'll do about the prostatectomy. During the prostatectomy, the gland is removed, leaving behind both the true and the false capsule as the plexus which lies between the two capsules. So the capsules of the prostate we have seen between the true and the false capsules, there is the prostatic venous capsule is there, venous plexus is located. So that's why during the operation, the gland is removed, leaving behind both the capsule because the plexus which lies between it. Now during thyroidectomy, what happening? Now here you can see the given diagram. So this is the prostate. So this is the true capsule. This is the glandular substance. So this is the cleavage line. Here is the true capsule and this is the false capsule. What lies between this capsule? Both the capsule, venous plexus. And that's why we have seen the it will leave behind both the capsule, right? Now you can see along with the thyroid gland, what happened here having the true and the false capsule. But you can see here the glandular substance of the thyroid gland. So between these two, there is no, so between these two capsules, there is the plexus. But here deep to the true capsule. So right, you can visualize in the given diagram. So here the venous plexus is located along with the glandular substance. So now what happened with the removal of the thyroid gland called the thyroidectomy? During the thyroidectomy, thyroid gland is removed along with the true capsule, while in the prostate we have left it behind, right? While thyroid gland removed along with the true capsule to avoid, what is functionally mainly to avoid the hemorrhaging during the operation, as a dense capillary plexus is present deep to the true capsule of the thyroid gland. So this is the more important along with the thyroid capsule and prostate capsule. So that is the difference between these two during the operation, what we have to do being a surgeon. Now, another applied aspect, clinical aspect of the prostate, inflammation of the prostate is called the prostatitis, right? It may be acute or chronic. Now, number one, benign, number third, benign prostatic hyperplasia, you can see here in the given diagram. So, the benign prostatic hyperplasia, you can see here, right? Now, this is a periurethral zone, is common, occurs in the periurethral zone. Carcinoma of the prostate occurs in the peripheral zone. For diagnosis purpose, the prostate specific antigen blood test is PSA, blood test is done to rule out the disease. The prostate is common site for the carcinoma, usually occurs after the age of the, so again the prostatic cancer. The prostate is the common site of carcinoma, usually occurs after the age of the 50 to 55 years. The metastatic spread occurs, as we have discussed, a valveless, the venous plexus connecting the venous plexus up to the vertebral column between the prostate and the vertebral venous plexus through the lumbar veins, which in turn communicate with the dural venous sinuses in the intracranial course. So the carcinoma of the prostate causing the secondaries and metastases, there is a retrograde spread of the prostate cancer in the vertebral column and the skull that we have seen in the blood supply. The function, secrete 10 to 30% of the final ejaculation. Fluid is seen thin and contains the acid phosphate, citric acid, amylase, fibrinogen, and the PSA, prostate specific antigen. So clinically rule out the prostatic cancer. The PSA blood test is the diagnostic purpose test to find out the diagnosis. Fibrinogen helps in the liquefaction of the semen. Now, so this is about the prostate. Now, second male reproductive organ is called the seminal vesicle. These are two lobulated sacs. You can see here the lobulated sacs called the seminal vesicle, situated behind the posterior surface of the urinary bladder, between the posterior surface. So here is the posterior surface of the urinary bladder and the rectum. So between these two, it is located. Each vesicle is about 5 cm long and directed upward and laterally. So seminal vesicle directed upward and laterally. The lower narrow end, you can see here, the lower narrow end forms the duct of the seminal vesicle, which joins the ductus deferens and a vas deferens to form the ejaculatory duct. So here is the seminal vesicle and the lower end are going to form the ejaculatory duct, which enter in the substance of the prostatic gland, which divides the median lobe from the posterior lobe. Again you can see the diagram, right? So this is about the vas deferens. You can see this is the seminal vesicle, so lower end is going to form the vas deferens. Now, seminal vesicle do not form a reservoir for the spermatozoa. The secretion forms a large part of the seminal fluid. The secretion is slightly alkaline and contains a fructose, and coagulating enzyme is known as vesiculose. Right? Now, third organ along with the male reproductive organ, that is called the vas deferens. Synonyms of the vas deferens called the ductus deferens or the deferent duct. Deferent duct. So length of these highly convoluted here, length of the vas deferens is about 45 cm long when straightened. Now, definition. The vas deferens is thick-walled muscular tube which transmit, what is the function of the vas deferens, which transmit the spermatozoa from the epididymis. Is the given diagram. You can see this is the testes, the posterior border of the testes, this epididymis, this is the head of the epididymis, body and tail of the epididymis, and commencement as the vas deferens. So here which transmit the spermatozoa from epididymis to the ejaculatory duct. It fills the cord-like structure at the upper lateral part of the structure scrotum in the living body along with the thumb and the index finger clinically. It has a narrow lumen except at the terminal dilated part is called the ampulla. Location and the course, you can see it is in its course the vas lies successfully, number 1, along in the scrotum, along with the posterior border of the testes, number 2, inguinal canal as in the part of the spermatic cord, number 3 in the greater pelvis, number 4 in the lesser pelvis. So how the vas deferens is located in the different 4 zones. Here you can see in the given diagram, number 1 you can see here the vas deferens in the scrotum, number 1. Posterior border. Now, here you can see in the inguinal canal along with the spermatic cord. Now here you can see in the inguinal canal. So this is about the vas deferens. Figure showing the course of the vas deferens. Now, number 1. The vas deferens begins as a continuation of the tail of the epididymis we have seen in the diagram along, number 1, along with the posterior border of the testes. At first it is very tortuous, we have seen in the given diagram. Now but gradual straightens as it ascends along the posterior border of the testes and medial to the epididymis. Now second, in the inguinal canal along with in the spermatic cord. The deferens lies vertically in the posterior part of the spermatic cord and it runs upwards to the superficial inguinal ring as the inguinal canal is extending from superficial inguinal ring to the deep inguinal ring. So then it traverses through the inguinal canal and in the vertical part of the course it can be felt as a cord-like structure within the spermatic cord in the living body. Now third, fourth location in the greater pelvis, right? So greater pelvis at the deep inguinal ring, it leaves the spermatic cord and hook round. So you can see here the inferior spermatic artery and hook round the lateral side of the, here you can see the vas deferens and you can see the inferior epigastric artery. So it hooks round the lateral side of the inferior epigastric artery, then passes backwards and laterally and across the external iliac vessels and enters in the lesser pelvis. Now the course of the vas deferens in the lesser pelvis, that is with the run downwards and backwards on the lateral pelvic wall deep to the peritoneum. It crosses here the obliteral-umbilical artery, obturator nerve and the vessels and the vesical vessels. Now here you can see the vas deferens. So you can see is given diagram, the ureter is there in the left lower zone. It traverses, crosses the ureter and bends medially at right angles to enter the sacrogenital fold of the peritoneum. Again you can see this is the ureter. You can see in the given diagram is ureter and this is the outline of the pelvic inlet and you can see the inferior epigastric artery. And here how the ductus deferens is angulated here from the seminal vesicle. So this is the part of the prostate. Reaching the base of the urinary bladder, the vas deferens runs downwards and forward medial to the seminal vesicle. We have seen in the previous diagram. Here it approaches the opposite duct and reaching the base of the prostate. At the base of the prostate, what happened? Vas deferens is joined at the acute angle by the duct of the seminal vesicle to form the ejaculatory duct which traverses through the substance of the prostate gland. The part of the vas deferens lying behind the base of the bladder is dilated, tortuous and is known as the ampulla of vas. Now you can see the diagram here, the green color indicating the course of the vas deferens from the epididymis to the up to the seminal vesicle and as an ejaculatory duct. So whole green color indicating the figure give rise to the course of the vas deferens. Now arterial supply from one of the terminal branch of the superior vesical artery which accompanies the duct to the testes and belt anastomosis with the testicular artery. The testicular artery is derived from the abdominal aorta. Now what about the venous drainage of the vas deferens? Veins from the ductus join to the vesical venous plexus which opens ultimately drain into the internal iliac vein. Clinically important, the most important, the sterilizing process in the male called the vasectomy. Ectomy means the removal of the one piece. The removing part of the vas deferens is one of the commonest operation being done for the purpose of the family planning. It is a minor operation which is done under the local anesthesia and a median. So you can see here in the given diagram, the cut end and block end of the vas deferens. The median incision is made in the upper part of the scrotum, just below the penis, and through this incision both the vas deferens are operated. A short segment, so you can see removed segment of the vas deferens is seen. A short segment of each duct is excised and the cut ends are ligated. The operation is reversible even after vasectomy. You can reversible the operation. Recanalizing can be done if required. After vasectomy, what happened? The testes continue to produce the hormones normally to maintain the male characteristics. The hormones pass out through the veins. Sperms are present in the ejaculation after the vasectomy for 2 to 3 months as it is an. The newly formed sperms are destroyed later on in the epidermis and are removed by the process called the phagocytosis. So after vasectomy, it will later on by this. Now the last topic, fourth topic, that is the male reproductive organ, that is the male urethra. The very important male urethra frequently can be asked in the short note is 18 to 20 centimeter long, which extends from the internal urethral orifice, right, in the urinary bladder. So this is the internal urethral orifice. Here you can see, and here to the external urethral opening called the meatus at the end of the penis. So whole is called the male urethra. Now the given diagram you can see. Here you can see the internal urethral sphincter, right? So this is the prostate part. So this whole is called the male urethra. The male urethra travels through the substance of the prostate is called the number 1 prostatic part of the urethra. Above that is called the pre-prostatic part of the urethra. Then it traverses through the external urethral sphincter, which is skeletal muscle, and that is called the membranous part of the urethra. So this is the membranous part of the urethra. And throughout traversing through the penis, that's why it's called the spongy or penile part of the urethra. So and at this as a external urethral orifice for the evacuation of the urine. Now shape of the male urethra, if it is in the flaccid state of penis, the long axis of urethra shows 2 curvatures and then therefore it is S-shaped. But if erect state of penis, the distal curvature is oblated and becomes J-shaped. During its course, it passes through the, as we have discussed, prostatic, then the membranous and the spongy penile part of the urethra. Again you can see this is the urethra, prostatic urethra, bulbar and membranous urethra, and the penile urethra up to the urethral meatus. The diagram showing the different part of the male urethra. Now considering in 2 main parts, relatively the short posterior part, which is short 4 cm long, lies in the pelvis proximal to the corpus spongiosum, is the cylinder along with the penis. In the transverse section we have seen in the histological diagram, and is act upon the erogenital sphincter mechanism and also act as a conduit. The posterior urethra consisting parts called the pre-prostatic segment, prostatic segment, and the membranous segment we have seen in the previous diagram. You can see here the pre-prostatic, then prostatic and the membranous. All these are the posterior part, right? Now here, relatively long anterior part urethra, which is about 16 centimeter long. So this is about 16 centimeter long. The anterior part, anterior urethra, within the perineum proximally and penis distally. Yes, it is surrounded by the corpus spongiosum, is a cylinder in the substance of the penis, and we have seen in the transverse section histologically the 3 cylinders and is functionally conduit. The anterior urethra consists of the parts called the bulbar urethra proximal component surrounded by the vessels. Now entirely within the perineum and the pendulous and the penile component that continues to the tip of the penis. Now here you can see the vertically extend up to the portion, the diagram showing the posterior part of the urethra. Surrounded by the proximal urethral sphincter, right? So here this part, anterior urethra, surrounded by the proximal urethral sphincter mechanism, contraction of the preprostatic urethra serves to prevent retrograde flow of the ejaculate through the proximal urethra in the bladder. Smooth muscle bundles run in continuity from the bladder neck down to the prostatic urethra, which has its own distinct adrenergic innervations. In flaccid state of penis, urethra as a whole representing the double curved except during the passage of the fluid along it. The urethral canal is merely slit-like. The urethral slit is crescentric traverse the prostatic part. So this is the part called the prostatic part. Then the membranous part, second, third is the penile part, and last, fourth, right lower zone, that is the external urethral orifice. If traversed through the prostatic part, the slit is crescentric or transversely arched. While through the membranous part, that is in the preprostatic and the membranous part, it is the stellate part, stellate like that. So number 2, right, upper 2, number 2 diagram, second number diagram. Now in the bulbar and the penile portion is a transverse. So you can see in the given diagram here, it is in the transversely left lower diagram. And external urethral orifice, it is completely right lower zone, that is the sagittal. Now moving toward the 3 different. So as I told you, the male urethra is divided into 3 main parts. As it traverses through the different organs, it traverses through the prostate, that called the prostatic part of the urethra, then traverses through the bulbar, then called the membranous part, then traverses through the penile part, that called the spongio, the penile urethra. Moving toward the number 1, prostatic part of the urethra, 3 to 4 centimeter in length. Course it begins at the internal urethral orifice and runs vertically downward through the anterior part of the prostate. Its size about the widest and most dilatable part of the male urethra, being widest in the middle and narrowest below where it joins with the membranous urethra. Now on transverse section, it is semilunar in shape with the convexity directed upwards. Now what are the features visualizing in the prostatic part of the urethra? The posterior wall floor of the prostatic urethra presents number 1, urethral crest, number 2, prostatic sinus. Now you can see the urethral crest, you can see, right? Now that is number 1. Number 1, so the urethral crest, a median longitudinal ridge of the mucous membrane, and that is called the urethral crest. This is the urethral crest is visualizing here. Now second is the, on each side of the urethral crest are the shallow depression called the prostatic sinus, the floor of which is separated by the orifices of the 15 to 20 prostatic ducts. Now here called the sinuses are visualizing in the given diagram. Sinuses, right? So these are the urethral sinuses number 2. Now number 3, features is visualizing in that prostatic part. You can see here the part visualizing prostatic utricle called the verumontanum, we'll discuss. Now the urethral crest and the prostatic sinuses and the prostatic duct. Now again the diagram, light color indicating that the prostatic utricle, the seminal colliculus and prostatic duct opening in that given diagram. Now third structure that we have left it behind, I told you we'll discuss it later on. There is an elevation called the Montegum colliculus seminalis, that is the again feature visualizing in the prostatic part of the urethra, male urethra, at about middle of the urethral crest. It contains slit-like orifice of the prostatic utricle. Number 4 are the ejaculatory ducts, the one on each side, or just within these orifice are two small openings called the ejaculatory duct. Now the prostatic utricle. Again, the prostatic utricle we can see is a cul-de-sac 6 cm long, runs upwards and backwards in the substance of the prostate behind the median lobe. Now, second part of the male urethra, that is the membranous part. Length is about 1.5 cm, which is shortest and least dilatable part of the male urethra. Narrowest except for the external urethral opening. Now, what is the course of the membranous part of the male urethra? It runs downwards and slightly forwards. Here you can see the membranous part, right? So, this is the prostatic part and this is the membranous part. So, here you can see course of the membranous part downward and slightly forward through the membranous urethra and pierces the perineal membrane about 2.5 cm below and behind the pubic symphysis. Now on the transverse section, it is a stellate shaped star shape. Now what are the features visualizing in the membranous part of the male urethra? Number 1, the membranous urethra is surrounding by the sphincter urethrae, that is the external urethral sphincter. The bulbourethral glands of copper are placed one on each side of the membranous urethra. Although their ducts open into the penile part of urethra after piercing the perineal membrane, the numerous urethral glands are also open in it. Now the third part is called the spongy, the last part of the penile, male urethra called the spongy part or the penile part of the male urethra, about 15 cm long, and that is the longest amongst the entire length of the male urethra. It is coarse, about a fixed part of the penile urethra runs forwards and upwards in the bulb of the penis. It bends downwards. In the previous diagram we have seen in front of the lower part of the pubic symphysis to continue as the free part of the penile urethra in the corpus spongiosum of the penis. It terminates at the external urethral orifice situated at the tip of the glans penis. So you can see this is about the penile part called the spongy part of the urethra. So it's the largest 15 cm long. Now the size is narrow with uniform diameter of about 6 mm in the body of the penis. So in the body of the penis is about the diameter is the 6 mm. It is dilated at its commencement, number 1, to form the intrabulbar fossa on the floor. You can see here it is dilated, and number 2 you can see the navicular fossa. Both of these two fossa are visualized. So it is dilated here to form the intrabulbar fossa on the floor and the sides, and within the glans penis to form the navicular fossa we have seen in the previous diagram on the roof and sides. Now external urethral orifice is the narrowest part of the male urethra. It forms the sagittal section slit about 6 mm long and is bound on each side by the small labium. Transverse section of the spongy or penile part of the male urethra is here. The transverse opening except for the external urethral orifice which is vertical. Part of the anterior urethra is surrounded by the bulbospongiosus is called the bulbar urethra and is wider part of the urethra. The bulbourethral glands which are open in this section 2.5 cm below the perineal membrane. Now features here, the ducts. What are the features seen in the penile part? Here you can see the duct of the bulbourethral glands. We have seen discussion as the urethral glands of litter facing forward. In addition to, there are the several small pit-like recesses called the lacunae of the Morgagni which opens obliquely forward. One lacunae in the roof of the navicular fossa is the largest and known as the lacuna magna, that is the sinus of urine. The lacunae receives the openings of the urethral glands. Now, sphincters of the male urethra. One is the internal urethral sphincter or sphincter vesicae. It is involuntary in nature because it is supplied by the sympathetic nerves, the lower thoracic and the upper lumbar, and is made up of the substantial collection of the smooth muscle. So it is made up of smooth muscle, that's why it is the involuntary in nature. It controls the neck of the bladder and prostatic urethra above the opening of the ejaculatory duct. Now another sphincter that is called the external urethral sphincter or the sphincter urethrae, that is voluntary, so obviously it is made up of striated muscle fibers and supplied by the perineal branch of the pudendal nerve, that is from S2 sacral, second sacral to fourth sacral. Now arteries, the urethral arteries from the internal pudendal arteries, the main artery just below the perineal membrane and travels through the corpus spongiosum to reach the glans penis. The dorsal penile artery via circumflex branches of each side. So both of these two arteries are supplying the male urethra. The veins, the anterior urethra and posterior urethra, the dorsal veins, anterior urethra, the dorsal vein of the penis, then the internal pudendal vein which drains ultimately into the prostatic venous plexus, internal veins. The posterior urethra ultimately drain prostatic and the vesical venous plexus and ultimately drain into the internal iliac veins. Now lymphatic drainage. Number one part, first part, prostatic urethra drain into the internal iliac lymph node. Membranous part drain into the again internal iliac and anterior urethra accompanying that of the glands which are deep inguinal lymph nodes. Now supply innervation. The prostatic plexus supplies the smooth muscle of the prostate and the prostatic urethra. The greater cavernous nerves are sympathetic to pre-prostatic sphincter during the ejaculation. The parasympathetic nerves are from second to fourth sacral segments. Now supply of the rhabdosphincter. What is rhabdosphincter? The rod-like made up of the striated muscle with levatorinae and the perineal membrane supplied by the sacral 2 segment of the spinal cord fibers which passes via the perineal branch of the pudendal nerve. Now, most important is the clinical anatomy of the male urethra. I will visualize along with the surgery. Number one, the catheterization of bladder. Number two, rupture of the urethra. Number three, urethritis, stricture of urethra, hypospadiasis, epispadiasis, and rupture of the penile urethra. Now, if the patient is suffering from the benign hypertrophy and if he is suffering from the retention of the urine, we have to introduce the catheter. You can see the catheterization of the urinary bladder. The catheter is visualized here. Catheter is introduced in the penile part of the urethra. So you can see the catheterization of the urinary bladder to remove the urine. So catheterization of urine, in the retention of the urine, we can introduce the catheter. Now what happening with the rupture of the urethra? If the rupture of the urethra is that can produce the extravasation of the urine up to the Holden's line in the lower limb. So here we can see here the rupture of the urethra is another clinical anatomy of the male urethra. The inflammation of the urethra is called the urethritis. Now stricture of the urethra abnormally can be possible. Then the hypospadiasis and epispadias, which both of these two are embryologically defect of the development. Hypo means below the penis, maybe in the perineum, the opening of the urethra that is in the below the penis, either in the penis, either in the or in the perineum.